these slides are in slides.com/leloso/GraphQL API for WP. The WordPress seem to be down. I don't know if it's up. I have this cache version. So let's start. So one thing, I come from WordPress. I know that this is a conference mostly for Drupal. If I'm actually wrong, let me know. But if you're Drupal and you have experience with WordPress, that'll be good. If you don't have experience with WordPress, it really doesn't matter, because what I'm going to show you now, I mean, it's very simple, very practical. Hopefully there's no technical problem to understanding this. If there's anything that you don't know, if I actually mention something and you're like, what is a CPT or whatever it is, please also let me know, okay? And GraphQL, you also need to tell me at any moment if there's something you don't understand. I will try to be as clear as possible. So what is an API? It's a mechanism through which the client can interact with a server. So we have a client, we want to get data, so we request data from the server, and then we have a response. So APIs in WordPress, we have two: the WP REST API, which is included in WP Core, and then we have WP GraphQL, which is wp-graphql.com. So I'm talking now GraphQL. So basically, there's a resolution for GraphQL, which is WP GraphQL. Okay, so nothing new here. But let's compare these two first. WP REST API works with fixed multiple endpoints. It retrieves data corresponding to resources, and it operates via get, post, put, and delete. So if you do a get to this URL to get the post, what you get is basically a big blob of data that is already predefined. WP GraphQL doesn't work like that. It has a single endpoint. Instead of having many endpoints, it has only one. And you have to pass a query with the data that you want to retrieve. It operates via post. So then in this case, if you want to get posts, you have a field called post, and then the ID, the title, and the URL. That's the data that you want to retrieve. And when you actually submit this query, you get exactly that data. So how do they compare? So corresponding to speed, if you are making a mobile app, mostly that's the case that we're talking about nowadays. You want to be fancy, you want to be fast, and all of that. If you are using REST, you might need to do multiple calls to get the data that you need, because you will get all the posts, and from each post you will get the user, the author, and for each author you get a list of something else. So you have to do multiple calls. And with WP GraphQL or GraphQL, you do only one. So in that sense, it is faster. Corresponding security. Corresponding security, WP REST API is very secure because you predefine the data that you want to expose. WP GraphQL is actually more tricky because you need to manage permissions, and it may be easy to do, it may not be so easy to do, okay? So you might actually be exposing data unintentionally, and that's not good. Caching, you can cache with no problem with WP REST API. It's already integrated with caching plugins. WP GraphQL is not the case because it operates via post. And this is one of the big pains from GraphQL in general. It's not a problem with WP GraphQL, but it's a problem with GraphQL that is not easily cacheable. Access control, how do you actually allow users to access your data or not access your data? You have to do it. It's a manual process, tedious, it's doable, but not the best workflow there. Simplicity, WP REST API is very simple, WP GraphQL not so much, and they are both used by developers. What does this mean? If you want to expose your data, you have to get down to code. So this is actually important, because if you're talking about WordPress, the good thing about WordPress is that it makes it easy for anyone to use, like designers and bloggers and marketing people and salesmen and everyone. And those are not developers. They won't be able to actually create a WordPress REST API or GraphQL endpoint. We don't know. Maybe they can, maybe they cannot. But the barrier is a bit high in that sense. So then with this idea in mind, right, I'm wondering, can we get the benefits of both the WP REST API and WP GraphQL at the same time? Oh, yes, we can. Here I am to actually talk about this. So introduction to the GraphQL API for WordPress. So guys, I have my GitHub repo. Let's see. I had it ready. I had it prepared. Basically, as you can see right now, it's in private, right? And I was going to do something on stage while you're looking at me, so you're witnesses of this. I'm going to make it public right now. This has been going on, like they have been on the making for what, 1 year, more than 1 year, and this is the moment in which it's going to happen. So give me 1 second to make it happen. Make it public. Okay, I need my password. And if everything goes fine, let's say it worked. I hope so. Let's see. So now it should be public. You can actually check it out. So I'm going to the, let's go to the chat. And now this is the URL. You can actually check it out. Tell me if it's actually public or if it's still not there yet. Session, is it working? Oh, event session. Oh, there's a bit of delay. I'm sorry. Yeah. Yes, it's public. This is my celebration moment because it's been going on for 1 year, and I was waiting until it was ready. Like when I say ready, I'm saying like perfect. A lot of work. So I'm going to show you what I have been able to create with this thing. Please bear with me because I'm extremely excited. This is my moment. So what do we have here? What is this GraphQL API thing? So github.com/GraphQL API/GraphQL-API launched today for this conference. You saw it. So what do we have? I'll show it to you in my working environment, but I had to start everything again. So give me 1 second. So while initializing Lando, which will take maybe a couple of minutes. So what do we have here? If you have used WP GraphQL, you may know that it's mostly let me close this. That is mostly a tool that you have to use from the backend to observe, like through code. The first thing that you will see with this plugin that I have just launched is that it has an interface. So everything is there to be clicked and it works, or at least that is the idea. So the first thing it has is a GraphQL. GraphQL is the editor of GraphQL. So basically you type the query there, you click on the play button, and magic happens, you get the response. You have also the full interactive schema. This is wonderful. So this is something that, talking about GraphQL or not, there is value in this. Basically, the way that GraphQL works is that you can actually interact with the data, whichever data it is that you have on your backend. So in the case of WordPress, there are like 12 tables or maybe 13 tables now. WP posts, WP users, WP comments, etc. And you know, how do you interact with the data? You have to go to the website, or you have to know how it's structured. You know, you have to do magic of sorts. But with GraphQL, you can actually interact with the data through this visualization. You can click on all the entities, post, user, comments. You can see all the connections. You can actually browse from one. You hop from one entity to the other. You can see all the relationships. So this is extremely powerful to create the interface that you need to power your application. You can see what is available, what is not available, what your clients can see, what they cannot see, how to filter the information, and all is very visual. So let's see if my environment, my environment still, yeah, it has started now. Let me see. Let's see if this works. Loading. Yay, here you are. So when you install the plugin, the first screen that you see is this one, which is the WP GraphQL. So here you type your query. In this case, I'm actually requesting for posts, libs 3, title, the date, the URL, the author, and all the data for each, the text, and the feature image. And when I click on play, if this actually doesn't fail, here we are, I got all the data. This, you also have it in WP GraphQL, okay? So nothing great here, I mean, what's the whole point? But if you actually click now on the interactive schema, This is something new that WP GraphQL doesn't have, that you can actually understand the data, you can actually visualize it. So we start with the root. And in the root, we have the fields that we can initially query. We have the page, pages, the post, the user, all of that. And then for each of them, you can actually browse the data. If we actually click on the post, it takes me to the post. And now I can see all the fields that we have on the post. We have the author, the comments, the feature image. If I go to the feature image, then I see all the properties that I have on the media. Here it is. And then the relationship with the author. Okay, so this is actually working. Okay. Let's continue with the presentation. We have here custom endpoints. This is something that is pretty awesome, I believe. Not because I made it, but because I think it's pretty useful. You have only a single endpoint with GraphQL. Normally, that means that the same data is exposed to everyone pretty much. So you have public data and then you have private data, which is accessible only by a certain client or just for your team and nobody else. That's difficult to do. Maybe you can do it, but it's difficult. Here is native to the plugin. So you can actually create many endpoints, and you can actually configure what data each of the endpoints is going to make available. So you can create an endpoint for one of your users and only expose this data and not other data. And the one feature that is the killer feature is called persistent queries. And this one I'm going to show it to you now live, because this is the one thing that can actually make everything worth it. Persistent queries is that you save the query on the website and that becomes a fixed endpoint. I mean, this is REST. So basically what you can actually do is you use GraphQL to record, to create the query. And once you have the query, you access the query, the data, through a fixed endpoint like in REST, okay? And this is the best of both worlds, because on one side, you have all the security from REST, you have the fact that you can cache it, because now you're accessing on a fixed endpoint, which you can do through GET, but you use GraphQL to query to code the query. So I'm going to show you this, okay? I'm sorry I get very excited with this, but yeah. Let's see. So how does it work? I go to persistent queries here. I have one already created, but let's create a new one. So I click on add new GraphQL persistent query. So this is going to be a CPT, a custom post type. It's all shiny, it uses Gutenberg, and it's because of Gutenberg that I've been coding this for like, I don't know for how long. I've been doing this for like at least 3 to 4 months, these components. I'm not into JavaScript, I want to shout, but it works. So right now I'm actually very happy. So I'm going to start coding the query. So my persistent query. So here we can actually click at the elements that we want to retrieve. So pages, for instance, we want for each page the author, the name, and the URL. And then we want the date of the page, and the title, and the URL, and the slide. If I click here, we have the data. Now, here comes the interesting part, publish. And tada, what actually happens is that, I open this on a new tab, is that I got a link created, in this case, GraphQL query, my persistent query with the data. So this is actually REST. You're actually using GraphQL to create a REST endpoint, which is wonderful. I'm so excited about this, sorry. Yeah, let's continue. I have 10 minutes left, so I'm going to show you only the most important thing. The second thing is access control list. You can define who can access the query field by field by field. So what does that mean? I'm going to show you again. So we go to access control list. So I will create a new access control list. Here, this is again a CPT. I'm creating a new custom post type list, whatever. Define access for. Here you have the list of fields. So for instance, let's say that this is actually a problematic thing. What happens with the user's email? Do you actually make it public or you make it private? Private to everyone or to the admin, like only the admin can access? So for instance, here what I can do is say email, the user email, only the logged in users can actually access this. Logged in, here we are. And since I can, I will also create another access control for the status of the post, because maybe I also don't want to show if it is draft or what it is. So it's custom post, it's status. This one, I'm going to say that only the roles of the admin or the editor or the author can actually do it. So I publish this, and this will actually create an access control list. And then I need to associate the access control list with a schema configuration. The schema configuration, what it does is that you configure the schema. You actually create the rules that will apply on the schema. For instance, who can actually access the fields. In this case, access control list. I just created this one called list. I updated, I save this, we have it. And now, if I go to persistent query, my persistent query, this is loading. We can come down, and here is a schema configuration. And I say I want that one, default config, okay? So from now on, whenever I execute this endpoint, like I had the user email. Let's see if this works actually. User's name, email. So in this window, actually logged in. So here it will have to work fine. So this is working, and now I copy this URL. Oops. And yeah, so you can associate it. Huh. And you also have cache control list. Basically, the idea is that you can actually define how much time is it going to be cached. So field by field, and the idea is if you access the query through the fixed endpoint, where are you guys? If you access the field through the fixed endpoint, now you can actually cache it, because this is not post anymore, that is get. So you can actually define, here we go once again, rules for the different fields. Let's see. Base caching. Here we go. So for instance, in this case, I have the field URL from the entity called queryable, that is that all posts, all users, everything is queryable. Like this is an interface, and it has 3,600 seconds, and then the post and page style, they have 60 seconds. And so when you actually call the query, if these fields are involved, it will calculate the max age automatically. So basically now what you can do is to cache the response. And then you have field deprecation list here. Demo time. I've been actually showing you the demo. I have quite a few videos here. The URLs of the videos with all the demonstrations are actually here. So now, this is an interesting thing, which is what I was actually doing before. I was comparing, right? Let's go back to you guys. So now what we have here is that this plugin, the GraphQL API, it's fast because it works like REST. You can actually cache it. It's secure because you can actually completely remove the single endpoint, and you only expose your data through predefined fixed endpoints that you have actually, decided. You have caching, you have access control, and it's simple. You have seen click, 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 done. Okay, they don't need to be a developer anymore, and this is what is really very exciting for me. That I hope that I put the plugin out there, and GraphQL is not only a topic that only experts, that only hardcore developers can actually code and understand, and you need to have a master's degree on JavaScript learning to be able to actually work with. And this being WordPress, right? WordPress is like is the biggest entity ever. You know, so many people using WordPress. So now this is creating a huge exposure to being able to interact with these APIs in a very easy way. I think that the work in this case is really easy. So what can we do through the WordPress, the GraphQL API for WordPress? One thing quite evident, number one, is that it can be integrated with Gutenberg blocks. So you have the Gutenberg block request data through the WP GraphQL. WP GraphQL, I'm sorry guys. Through GraphQL API, which gets the data from the WordPress server behind it, and it gets the data back. So it makes the blocks much easy to power with data. You can interact with cloud services and with external APIs, because as much as the API can interact with your own application, with your own code, it can also interact through calling an external URL with any service from outside, bring the data, process the data, filter the data, and give it back to you in the format that you need. Once again, you have the application in your WordPress, you get the data from the cloud, and then you give it back. I have a plugin which interacts with Google Translate. I haven't released it yet because, I mean, you know, only today I released the plugin. But it's just amazing. I basically connect the API to Google Translate, and I say translate this to French. And my website is all in French. And I didn't have to do anything, like at the field level. Each field is already translated to French. And then finally, WordPress can become the OS, the operating system of the web, because anything can interact with WordPress, an application, React, Gatsby, Vue, an app, Angular, whatever it is, call it, gets the data back. So release date, today, you just saw it, you've been witness. So check it out, github.com/GraphQL API/GraphQL-API. This is not the same name because I came late. GraphQL-API as a username is already taken in GitHub, but this is good enough, right? So check it out and share with your friends. And I want to say one parting thought, even though I have been saying this all along, which is GraphQL for everybody. This makes it easy to use GraphQL in WordPress, so now everybody can use GraphQL, and I'm very, very, very excited about this. Thank you so much. I have like 10 minutes left for Q&A.
Yes, thank you so much, Leo. And if you would like to ask a question, please feel free to go ahead and share your question in the chat for this session. And we'll go ahead and kick off the Q&A. I've actually got a question for you, Leo, while we wait for folks to share their questions. Is there, so I noticed that you shared kind of, insights about WP GraphQL and also, this new project. Very exciting announcement. Very, very, very thrilled to see this. One question is, for WordPress folks who are already on WP GraphQL, what does the migration path look like to leverage the GraphQL API for WordPress instead?
I think it's not straight for sure, because the WP GraphQL uses edges to retrieve data between entities. So for instance, if you retrieve the post and you want to know how many posts there are, that is data that is associated on the edge. I don't do that. I have another field called post count. So that means that you will have to modify the query. So it will be ideal if you want to switch from WP GraphQL to the GraphQL API for WordPress, that the query remains and that you just change the plugin and then everything works. But no, that is not the case. So basically, you will need to code the query once again. The second thing is I'm launching this plugin today. So there's only so many fields that I have implemented, or so many entities: post, user, comment, tags. They are implemented, but I still have not done category. I have not done options. I have not done something else. I forgot it. So I still need to basically keep implementing this to give support to the whole schema of WordPress. So in that sense, WP GraphQL is better only because they started earlier and they have a big community by now. I don't know how many developers they have, but they have several, and I have been working on this on my own. So my hope is that starting from today, since you saw how this is, if there is interest, somebody will come and say, hey, I'll help you. And then, everything goes faster. Yeah.
Thank you. And we have a question here from an attendee, Alejandro Barrero. Is it possible to use the GraphQL API for WordPress to create a WooCommerce site?
Yes, but not now, not yet. So basically, there is a plugin for WP GraphQL that already integrates with WooCommerce. You can use it. In my case, for this plugin that I'm launching, it's not done yet. So somebody needs to create the entity called product and implement all the fields. It's not difficult, but it has to be done. So potentially, yes, in some point it will happen.
Thank you. So I guess the answer is wait and see. One last question for you from me, Leo. I think a very exciting announcement. As you see, there's a lot of folks very excited about this. For folks who are really interested in working with you and contributing to GraphQL API for WordPress, get started. How do they get a hold of you? And what's your contribution policy?
I just launched this project like 15 minutes ago.
Working on the contribution policy.
Let's see how it goes. I've been working on this alone for more than one year, actually for several years. This GraphQL API, the engine behind this, I have been working on it for like 3 or 4 years or even more. It predates GraphQL, and I'm actually not lying. I have created this. The engine is based on server-side components. It's like React, but in PHP, and it's just perfect. It's just an amazing architecture for solving the GraphQL problem. The GraphQL problem. It actually solves the query without using a graph, and it's very, very, very fast. So I've been working on this for many years now, but this is the first time that I can actually show it, to people. So to be honest, I don't know how it will be. My hope is that, people will be interested and they'll be like, hey, I really want to contribute. Let's see, and then, things will happen. But to be honest, this is a very new experience for me.